It is the 31st of May 2013, and a new theme park ride is opening to the public at Alton Towers Park and Resort. Crowds line up to have a go on the newest experience, which promises 14 inversions, which makes it a proper breakfast revisiting journey. The route to its opening has been a little bit troubled, with some technical difficulties during the construction and testing. Even the press pre-event was not immune to technical hiccups. The first day, open to the public, went pretty good, but little did anyone know that in just a few years, the ride would experience a catastrophic failure that would change several lives forever. Today we're looking at the Smiler crash at Alton Towers. My name is John and welcome to Plainly Difficult. This video wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for my Patreon, YouTube and Ko-fi members. If you want to support the channel financially, then you can from just £1 per month. As always, the links will be in the pinned comment below. Prelude. Living in the United Kingdom, it's hard to not have been in or at a Merlin Group theme park, attraction or some kind of linked entertainment venue. Central London is littered with their tourist traps, for example the Sea Life Centre, London Dungeons or Madame Tussauds. The company's roster of attractions isn't just limited to the capital city, as the company owns some of the country's biggest theme parks. My personal favourites are Legoland and Chessington, but for our story today we're actually looking at a park that I've not personally been to, and that is Alton Towers. I've always been somewhat of a wuss when it comes to fast rides. I'm more of a slow theme ride type of person. Regardless, our story begins and ultimately ends here in Alton Towers. Background. This is Alton Towers. It is a theme park in Staffordshire. It is the UK's largest theme park, spanning 910 acres, which is home to some 50 rides. This includes 10 roller coasters in 2025, but for the interest of our video, back in 2015, it only has 9. Oh, and the park is around here on the United Kingdom map. It attracts just shy of around 3 million paying entries per year. Visitors are from anywhere in the world. However, it's reasonable to say that a majority are actually UK-based visitors. The park has a history all the way back to 1980, at least as a theme park. The site dates back even further as a country estate, but at 378 words into this script, we need to keep on track, and excuse the pun. Anywho, our story today is about this part of Alton Towers theme park. It, like many other sections of the site, saw multiple changes over the years, as rides are built, become life expired, are then demolished, and then replaced with new and even more exciting attractions. So by 2005, this ride, the Black Hole Ride, which had opened in the mid-1980s, had become a bit too costly to maintain for the Merlin Group. Cutting its losses, the company decided to close the attraction off and seek a buyer for its track machinery and ride vehicles. For a number of years, the empty ride tent would be cordoned off from the public, but upon the opening of the 2010-13 ride, it was hinted that a new attraction would take over the old black hole space. In March 2012, a new planning application was approved by Staffordshire Moorlands District Council for a new roller coaster on the theme park site. As a side note, it always entertains me that they have to apply for planning permission the same way if I wanted to do a side extension to my house. Maybe I should apply for a Big Dipper in my back garden. Actually, probably not actually. Construction of the new ride, designated Secret Weapon 7, began on the 12th of April 2012 with the dismantling of the old ride building. Work on a new rides track began a few months later when the first prefabricated steel works arrived on site. In March 2013, the first ride vehicles were installed. The name Smiler had been announced a couple of months earlier. Testing began around the same time, aiming for publicity running in May 2013. The entire project had been pushed back several times due to construction delays. Issues would plague the ride throughout its launch, as noted in the Mirror. A group of 16 journalists was stranded on the £18 million ride, which has a world record 14 loops. They were stuck for around 30 minutes. As you can see, it didn't have a great start, but it would welcome paying guests for the first time on the 31st of May 2013. The ride will be plagued with loads of minor incidents with stalled vehicles. That is when a train doesn't have enough momentum to complete the gravity sections of the track. But now we need to quickly look at the design of the coaster, the Smiler. So much like other roller coasters across the world, the Smiler was not an in-house creation. Instead, it was from a line of coaster designs from a company called Gerstlauer Amusement Rides GmbH. The model used for the Smiler was called the Infinity Coaster, and said ride was the first of its type. It is in itself a variation of another long-standing type called the Eurofighter roller coaster. Anywho's, it's a multiple-loop steel-tracked roller coaster with 14 inversions and is pretty impressive at 1,170 metres long. It is designed to have up to 5 trains, each with up to 16 passengers in 4 rows of 4 in operation at any one time along the ride's track. So once a train is loaded at the ride station and the line ahead is deemed clear by the programmable logic controller, it indicates to the ride operator that they are safe to dispatch a ride vehicle. The ride employs something familiar to you train aficionados, that is, block section protection. Only 1 train is allowed in each block at any one time. If a train is found to foul the block, then it is automatically stopped, using, as the system calls it, a block stop command. However, this system is actually very good for allowing multiple trains on the tracks by dividing it up into multiple blocks. So normally once a train is dispatched, it will proceed and clear each block section. If a train is noted as travelling too fast, then trim brakes are placed at strategic points along the route. The normal operating mode, when everything was hunky-dory, was, you guessed it, called normal mode. But when the system detected a fault, it would have to be placed into maintenance mode. This was only to be entered into by on-site engineers. In this operating mode, safety systems could be overridden, including the block stop commands. Now, after a fault, the engineers were required to send an empty train around the ride to do a full ride experience in order for it to be allowed to be switched back into normal mode. The ride vehicles rely on gravity after the coaster's steep lift hills to gather enough speed to clear the inversions and loops scattered around the track layout. However, sometimes trains get stalled, or valleyed as they're called, where they have not had enough momentum to clear said loops. Many issues can cause this, such as bearing issues on the wheels, accidental extra braking on a brake run, or even a severe enough strong headwind. Now, as a quick extra to all of this info dump, ride vehicles can be added via a transfer track near the ride station. This allows for trains to be taken in and out of storage. Right, without any further delay, let's get on to the disaster. The disaster. It is the 2nd of June 2015, and the day at Alton Towers is going like any other Tuesday in the park. Riders queue up and experience the thrill of the site's many roller coasters. Of course, today we're only looking at one, the Smiler. Today, 4 trains are being operated around the ride, with the 5th being stored in the nearby workshop. At around 1 PM, the Smiler ride would generate a fault, as noted in the later published health and safety report. The start enable button in the station load-unload area had been pressed for too long. A flashing light had been noticed by the operator on the control panel. They contacted the on-site engineers who came down to assist. Just before the fault indication, a group of passengers were placed on the train, but it was not dispatched from the station. The last successful train had actually been dispatched a few minutes before the fault. The fault is logged in the daily ride report sheet, and at around the same time, the passengers are asked to leave the train they had just boarded in the station, and they're placed back at the front of the queue. The ride is cycled to get riders who had been stuck due to the fault back to the station for unloading. At the same time, it was thought a 5th train could be added to the system. It was moved out onto the transfer line, ready to be added. Over the next 3 minutes, 3 empty trains ran through the ride, and all made it back to the station. So now, all 4 current trains are back empty, complete in the ride station confines. The 2 attending engineers, with the ride now fully empty, placed the system into maintenance mode, allowing them to clear the fault by acknowledging the message. The ride, now with the fault cleared, is decided by the engineers to make use of the shutdown to add another train. the one that is standing on the transfer line. By 13:25 in the afternoon, all 5 trains are now within the station block. The addition of the extra train in maintenance mode generated several fault codes recorded between 13:19 and 13:25. This was due to alerts with the transfer track switching system. Next, an empty train is sent around the ride as required before restarting loading passengers. The train stops just short of lift number 2 and failed to engage with it, causing it to stall. By now there are 4 engineers on site at the Smiler. 3 go down to push the train forward to engage it with the lift, and it does. The empty train arrives back at the station and another empty one is dispatched. It climbs the first lift and then runs down into the first gravity section of track called block number 3. However, it does not clear the section. It stalls at the top of the Cobra loop. It rolls back down and eventually settles at the lowest point in the section. The operators and engineers seemingly haven't realised this. As such, they load the previously unloaded passengers onto the train on the platform, and it is set off around the ride. This is at 13:43. Around the same time, the empty train has fully settled at the bottom of the Cobra loop. The passenger-loaded train reaches the top and stops at lift number 1. A stop lock has been triggered. This is again from the stalled train further down the track. One of the engineers leaves the Smiler control cabin and makes his way to the control panel OPB3 in order to undertake a trackside block reset. This would mean the ride's control system would ignore block 3 where the stranded train was. It was clear that the engineers had not realised that the stop was caused by an empty stalled train and instead was maybe just a glitch from the previous faults that were recorded on the system. Then permission was asked for a code 0 that allows all trains to be returned back to the station once again. This is because the engineers have to change the mode from maintenance to evac as the system doesn't allow the change directly back to normal, and thus forces the ride to cycle around to get all the trains back to the station. This was due to the now overridden block section, which meant that the system then had to be reset yet again. In the ride's program logic of the evac mode, the system prioritises moving the train that is furthest into the ride experience. As per its programming, it began moving the train which was stopped on lift 1. The train began to move at 13:51 and 5 seconds, and just 25 seconds later, it entered the lowest point of the Cobra loop and crashed into the stationary train with enough estimated kinetic energy equivalent to a family car of 1.5 tons colliding with something at 90 miles an hour. But the collision was not just one event. Both trains pendulum backwards and forwards around 12 times until eventually coming to a complete stop. Each time the front row of the passenger train became more and more crushed in. Essentially, the passengers in that front row were the crumple zone. They would be so severely hurt that the crash would leave them fighting for their lives and would ultimately receive life-changing injuries. The train was left hanging at an angle of 45 degrees around 20 feet above the ground. The emergency response was far from swift. 2 of the engineers came down to have a look a couple of minutes post-crash. A scaffold would be eventually erected around the crashed train, and the first 999 call wouldn't come in post-crash until 17 minutes after the initial incident. Clearly those first 20 minutes or so, no one was really understanding the severity of the incident. It would take between 4 and 5 hours before all the passengers, numbering 16, could be released and rescued. All throughout, they were under extreme distress and pain. In the aftermath, the ride's CCTV recording devices were taken into possession by the police, and the ride was shut down and cordoned off from the public, as the health and safety executive initiated a criminal investigation into the ride's operation. The ride would remain closed until March 2016, whilst extra safety systems were installed and the investigation was underway. A notable drop in revenue was experienced by the park due to the negative press that the crash had generated. Merlin Group closed a few other rides at their other parks whilst the company reviewed their safety protocols. Luckily, no one died, but I feel like pushing the no one died button is not very appropriate here, as many had life-changing injuries. 2 of the riders were on a date together and were only teenagers. One of them would lose a leg. But interestingly, during research for this video, I actually found out that they got married. So at least something good came of it. But what of the investigation? What was the root cause? Let's move on to our next section then. The investigation. Almost as soon as the crash happened, an investigation was launched, as such an incident shouldn't have really occurred. At the time of the accident, the Smiler ride had only been open for just about 2 years. The cause of the train getting stalled was put down to a very strong headwind. This had caused the earlier stalling that required the train to be manually pushed forwards to the hill lift. An internal investigation run by Alton Towers found no issues with the mechanical condition of the ride, and instead put the blame on the individual staff members, as stated in a BBC report. Alton Towers said it followed standard HR procedures and taken the appropriate action when dealing with the staff whose errors caused the crash. But there was clearly more to this than a rogue bunch of staff. The health and safety executive would point the finger more towards the organisation as a whole in its factual report. There is no evidence to suggest that when engineering staff attend breakdown work on rides, that these tasks have been formally trained out, audited, overseen or supervised by the management team. HSE would further say, due to the using of this shadowing system, it remains unclear how Alton Towers can account for content or quality of training and information to the engineering staff by their fellow engineers, who are either a new engineer to a ride or the ride itself is new, i.e. for work involving breakdown/block reset situations. In addition to this, the ride also had some technical shortcomings. The majority of the ride was actually covered by CCTV cameras, which showed the trains as they navigated the track, including the crash point and the point the empty train had stalled. Although only the last 2 rows of the stationary stranded train were visible on the CCTV image provided, which could allow for the engineers missing the visual indication of where the train was. The screw-up will be summarised during the sentencing remarks at the Crown Court in September 2016. The obvious shambles of what occurred involving lack of communication and double checking could and should easily have been avoided by a written system of working to cover this crucial period of human intervention, including a single overall supervisor and a structured approach to ensuring the track was safe for passengers before authorising a reset and return to normal mode. Merlin Attraction Operations Limited was charged by the Health and Safety Executive at North Staffordshire Justice Centre on the 22nd of April 2016. The company pleaded guilty, but it would not be let off the hook. It would be fined £7.5 million, reduced to $5 million due to the plea. Many of the victims would also bring forward individual suits against Merlin. Merlin said in the press that they were prepared to settle any outstanding claims as soon as the victims were ready. So that's my video on the Smiler disaster. It's going to be a 3 on my scale. Even though no one died, the lives it affected definitely puts it, I think, a 3 on the scale. And this is what I've got for my root cause analysis card. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below. This is a Plain Default production. All videos on the channel are Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike licensed. Plain Default videos are produced by me, John, in a currently very warm corner of southern London, UK. And all that's left to say is thank you very much for watching, and Mr. Music, play us out please.